I am Allison, 32 years old, and I have spent my entire life in my brother Nathan's shadow. While he was the coding prodigy who could do no wrong, I was the underachiever who just didn't get real tech. What my family never knew was that I secretly built a multi-million-dollar tech company from scratch. At our annual Easter dinner, Nathan was doing his usual bragging about his superior career when my grandma Margaret dropped a bombshell that left the entire table speechless. Before I dive into what happened, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by your own family. Trust me, this story is worth sticking around for. I grew up in Redmond, a suburb of Seattle that lives and breathes technology. Our neighborhood was filled with Microsoft employees, software engineers, and tech entrepreneurs. My parents were both computer scientists who met working at a startup in the 90s. Technology wasn't just a career in our household, it was a religion. From the time he was 10 years old, my brother Nathan showed an uncanny aptitude for coding. I still remember the day my dad found him hunched over our clunky desktop computer, having figured out how to write a simple program that made colorful patterns on the screen. Dad was ecstatic, calling Mom in to witness what their little genius had created. "He's going to be the next Bill Gates," Dad proclaimed, ruffling Nathan's hair proudly. Nathan soaked up the praise like a sponge, his confidence growing with each line of code he mastered. By middle school, he was building websites and small applications. Our parents converted the spare bedroom into a coding lab for him, equipped with the latest computer hardware they could afford. I was different. While I enjoyed technology, I approached it from a more creative, people-oriented perspective. I was interested in how technology could solve real human problems, not just the elegant complexity of the code itself. This fundamental difference in our approaches became the defining feature of our relationship. "Allie's more of an artist," Nathan would say. Whenever relatives asked about my computer skills, the word artist carrying a subtle condescension in our STEM-focused family. I wasn't struggling in school or failing math. I simply had a different way of thinking that didn't revolve around algorithms and programming languages. Our parents never explicitly favored Nathan, but their bias was evident in 1,000 small ways. They attended every robotics competition and hackathon. Nathan participated in beaming with pride as he collected trophies and certificates. My achievements in debate club or business class presentations were acknowledged with a distracted "Nice, that's nice, honey," as they returned to asking Nathan about his latest coding project. As we moved through high school, the divide between us grew more pronounced. Nathan was winning regional science fairs with sophisticated programming projects, while I found my niche in entrepreneurship competitions and business courses. I still loved technology, but approached it from the perspective of what it could do for users rather than how it was built. "The problem with you, Allie," Nathan told me once after I'd shared an idea for an app, "is that you don't understand the technical limitations. You have these big, fluffy ideas without any concept of what it takes to actually build them." His dismissal hurt, but it also sparked a determination in me. I began teaching myself enough coding to understand the technical aspects of my ideas. Not to become a developer like Nathan, but to be able to speak the language and understand the possibilities and constraints. Family gatherings inevitably became showcases for Nathan's accomplishments. Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas mornings, and birthday celebrations all featured extended discussions of Nathan's latest programming feat or academic achievement. I learned to smile politely and wait for the conversation to eventually briefly turn to my activities. The one person who never compared us was our grandmother, Margaret. A retired librarian with a sharp mind and sharper tongue, Grandma Margaret had a knack for seeing people clearly. When she asked about our interests, she gave equal weight to Nathan's coding projects and my business ideas. "Different minds solve different problems," she would tell me when I visited her alone, away from Nathan's dominating presence. "The world needs all kinds of thinkers. Never let anyone tell you your way of seeing things isn't valuable." Those quiet conversations in Grandma's cozy living room became my sanctuary. She encouraged me to pursue my interests in technology and business, lending me books on entrepreneurs and innovators who had changed the world without necessarily writing the code themselves. Our family had a tradition of gathering at Grandma Margaret's house for Easter dinner. It was the one holiday that she insisted on hosting, filling her modest home with spring flowers, decorated eggs, and the smell of her famous ham and scalloped potatoes. The Easter gathering included not just our immediate family, but aunts, uncles, and cousins as well. These Easter dinners had become a predictable performance over the years. Nathan would hold court explaining his latest technical achievement in excruciating detail to relatives who nodded politely while understanding little of what he described. I would sit quietly answering questions about my hobby interests when asked, but mostly fading into the background. "You need to speak up more," Grandma Margaret told me after one particularly Nathan-dominated Easter when I was 17. "Don't let him define you. You have your own story to tell." Her words stayed with me, planting a seed that would take years to fully bloom. As I watched Nathan bask in the family's admiration year after year, I wasn't consumed with jealousy as much as a growing determination to succeed on my own terms in my own way. I didn't need to beat Nathan at his own game. I needed to create my own. When it came time for college, Nathan unsurprisingly received a scholarship to study computer science at Stanford. The farewell party our parents threw him was more elaborate than my high school graduation celebration had been. Relatives and family friends gathered to wish him well, many offering predictions about the groundbreaking technologies he would surely develop. I chose to attend the University of Washington, studying business with a focus on technology management. My parents seemed mildly disappointed by my choice, though they never said so directly. "It's a good school," Mom said carefully when I showed her my acceptance letter, "and business is practical." The unspoken comparison to Nathan's prestigious program hung in the air between us. College was transformative for me. Away from Nathan's shadow for the first time, I flourished in courses that combined business strategy with technological innovation. I discovered that my approach to technology, focusing on user needs and market opportunities, was not just valid but highly valued in the business world. Meanwhile, Nathan excelled at Stanford as everyone expected. His professors praised his technical brilliance, and he secured an internship at Google after his sophomore year. When he came home for holidays, his stories of Silicon Valley culture and cutting-edge projects dominated family conversations. After graduation, Nathan immediately landed a coveted position at a well-known tech company called TechCore, which developed enterprise software solutions. His starting salary was impressive, and he moved into a sleek apartment in downtown Seattle. Our parents couldn't have been prouder. "Nathan is absolutely killing it," Dad would tell anyone who would listen. "His team lead says he's the most promising junior developer they've hired in years." I started my career more modestly, taking a position as a product manager at a mid-sized tech company. The role combined my business knowledge with my understanding of technology, allowing me to bridge the gap between developers and users. I found the work deeply satisfying, using my empathy and communication skills to translate user needs into technical requirements. When Nathan heard about my job during a family dinner, he smirked. "Product management, huh? That's where they put the people who understand the business but can't actually build anything." "It's an important role," I defended. "Someone needs to make sure what gets built actually solves real problems for users." He waved dismissively. "Real tech people code, Allie. What you do is just supporting roles." His words stung, reinforcing the insecurity I'd battled for years. Was I really just on the periphery of the tech world because I wasn't a developer? For a few months, I questioned my career path, wondering if I should try to become more technical to earn real tech credentials. But the more I worked with developers, the more I recognized that my skills were different but equally valuable. I could see patterns and opportunities that highly technical people often missed. I understood user psychology and market dynamics in ways that made our products more successful. 3 years into my career, I attended a tech conference where I met Rebecca, a brilliant developer who shared my frustration with enterprise software that prioritized technical complexity over user experience. Over drinks at the conference hotel bar, we sketched out ideas for a different approach to enterprise solutions. "The problem is that most enterprise software is designed by developers for developers," Rebecca said, drawing diagrams on a cocktail napkin. "But the end users aren't developers. They're ordinary people who need intuitive interfaces. Exactly, I agreed, excitement building as our ideas aligned. And they need systems that work together seamlessly. The fragmentation in enterprise tools is killing productivity. That night sparked what would become an obsessive side project. While maintaining our day jobs, Rebecca and I spent evenings and weekends refining our concept for user-friendly integrated enterprise software. We identified a significant gap in the market. Existing solutions were powerful but painfully difficult to use and integrate with other tools. We developed a business plan in secret, working from coffee shops and my small apartment. I didn't tell my family about this project, knowing that Nathan would dismiss it as another of my fluffy ideas, and my parents would inadvertently dampen my enthusiasm with their doubtful questions. After months of preparation, we secured a meeting with a venture capital firm that specialized in enterprise software. To our amazement, they saw the potential immediately. 2 weeks later, we had $500,000 in seed funding, and a decision to make: keep our stable jobs or take the leap into entrepreneurship. I'm terrified, I confessed to Rebecca the night before we had to decide. What if we fail spectacularly and Nathan gets to say, "I told you so," for the rest of my life? Then we fail, she shrugged. But what if we succeed and you get to say nothing at all because success speaks for itself? Her confidence bolstered mine. We quit our jobs and founded ConnectWise Solutions with a mission to revolutionize enterprise software through human-centered design and seamless integration. When I told my family I was leaving my job to start a company, their reactions were predictably discouraging. My parents exchanged worried glances, asking practical questions about health insurance and how long I could pay rent without a steady income. Nathan was more directly dismissive. Another tech startup. "Do you know what the failure rate is for those?" he asked with an air of expertise. "Like 90% crash and burn in the first year. But hey, good luck with that." What they didn't know was that we already had funding and a solid business plan. I deliberately downplayed these aspects, describing ConnectWise as a small startup idea I was exploring with a friend. Better to have them underestimate us than to face constant questioning and skepticism. There was one family member I did confide in, Grandma Margaret. During a private visit to her house, I shared the full scope of our plans and the funding we'd secured. "I knew you had it in you," she said, her eyes twinkling with pride. "You've always seen what others miss." To my surprise, she asked detailed questions about our business model and growth strategy. Though not tech-savvy herself, she understood markets and people. At the end of our conversation, she made an unexpected offer. "I'd like to invest in ConnectWise," she stated firmly. "Grandma, that's not necessary," I protested. "We have venture funding." "I'm not doing this out of charity," she insisted. "I'm doing it because I believe in you and I recognize a good investment when I see one. $25,000. That's my offer." I was moved to tears by her faith in me. After consulting with Rebecca and our lawyers, we accepted Grandma's investment, making her a small but official stakeholder in ConnectWise Solutions. She made me promise not to tell the rest of the family, especially Nathan. "Let them see the results when the time is right," she advised with a conspiratorial wink. "Some lessons are best learned through surprise." The first year of ConnectWise Solutions was the most challenging and exhilarating time of my life. Rebecca and I rented a tiny office in a rundown building on the outskirts of Seattle's tech district. We couldn't afford the premium locations where companies like Nathan's TechCore had their gleaming headquarters, but our space had the essentials: reliable internet, decent coffee, and room for the 3 additional employees we managed to hire. Those early days were a blur of pitch meetings, product development sessions, and midnight coding sprints. While Rebecca led the technical development, I focused on understanding customer pain points and translating them into product requirements. We were targeting mid-sized businesses that were struggling with the complexity and poor integration of existing enterprise solutions. "The problem isn't a lack of tools," I explained during one pitch to a potential client. "It's that all these powerful tools don't talk to each other, forcing your employees to become human integration points, manually transferring data between systems." Breaking into the enterprise software market proved even harder than we'd anticipated. Established players had deep relationships with procurement departments, and intimidating lists of features. What we offered was simpler, but more intuitive and connected, eliminating the integration headaches that plagued most businesses. After 4 months of constant rejection, we finally landed our first major client, a regional healthcare provider, frustrated with their current systems. The day they signed the contract, Rebecca and I splurged on expensive champagne and celebrated with our tiny team in our shabby office. To solving real problems for real people, I toasted, feeling for the first time that we might actually succeed. That first client became our case study, and their enthusiastic testimonials opened doors to more opportunities. By the end of our first year, ConnectWise had grown to 12 employees and was approaching profitability, a rare achievement for such a young startup. Throughout this time, I maintained a deliberate silence about the company's progress with my family. At holiday gatherings and Sunday dinners, I deflected questions about my little startup with vague assurances that things were coming along, and quickly turned conversations towards safer topics. "I want to succeed or fail on my own terms," I explained to Rebecca when she questioned my secrecy, without Nathan's commentary or my parents' comparisons. "If we crash and burn, they'll never know how high we flew first. And if we succeed well, the reveal will be that much sweeter." Nathan, meanwhile, continued his upward trajectory at TechCore, eventually being promoted to senior developer and then team lead. Each family gathering featured detailed accounts of his technical achievements and the critical projects entrusted to him. I listened and nodded, bottling the growing urge to share my own successes. As ConnectWise entered its second year, we secured a Series A funding round of $10 million, valuing our company at $40 million. The investment allowed us to move to proper offices in downtown Seattle, just 5 blocks from TechCore's headquarters. We expanded to 25 employees and accelerated our product development. Our flagship product, an integration platform that allowed disparate enterprise systems to work together seamlessly, was gaining attention in the tech press. TechCrunch featured us in an article about emerging enterprise solutions, calling ConnectWise the company to watch in business process integration. I kept the article from my family even as I proudly framed it for our office wall. By our third year, ConnectWise had established itself as an innovative player in the enterprise software market. We had over 100 employees, including Jasmine, a brilliant CTO we'd hired from a major competitor. With her technical leadership complementing Rebecca's development expertise and my business strategy, we formed a formidable executive team. The company's growth attracted more media attention. I found myself being invited to speak at conferences and participate in industry panels, always careful to schedule these events in cities far from Seattle to minimize the chance of word getting back to my family. At one such conference in Boston, I overheard 2 attendees discussing TechCore's struggles with their outdated integration approach. My ears perked up immediately. "Their architecture just can't handle modern API requirements," one technologist told another. "They're losing clients to more agile competitors." I did some discreet research and discovered that TechCore, Nathan's company, was indeed facing significant challenges. Their legacy codebase, once their strength, had become a liability as technology standards evolved. They were hemorrhaging clients and struggling to update their core products quickly enough. When we secured our Series B funding round of $60 million, valuing ConnectWise at $200 million, our board began discussing acquisition strategies to accelerate growth. We identified several smaller companies with complementary technologies that could enhance our platform. During one such discussion, our CFO mentioned TechCore as a potential acquisition target. "They're struggling but have solid technology in the workflow automation space," she explained, unaware of my personal connection. "Their market cap has dropped significantly. We could probably acquire them for a reasonable price." My heart raced at the suggestion. The idea of acquiring Nathan's company, of becoming essentially his boss, triggered a complex swirl of emotions. Part of me thrilled at the poetic justice, while another part worried about the personal complications it would create. I disclosed my relationship to the board, explaining that my brother worked at TechCore as a VP of engineering. "Is this going to be a problem?" our lead investor asked bluntly. Because if personal feelings are going to interfere with sound business decisions, we need to know now. This is business, not personal, I assured them, even as my stomach churned with uncertainty. TechCore's technology complements ours, and the price is right. My relationship with their VP of engineering won't affect my judgment about the company's value. After weeks of analysis and discussion, our board approved the acquisition strategy, including TechCore, among 5 companies we plan to pursue. The timing aligned eerily with our family's annual Easter gathering at Grandma Margaret's house, scheduled for the weekend before the acquisition announcements would go public. I called Grandma to warn her about the upcoming acquisition, knowing she was still our secret investor. "So, you're buying Nathan's company," she chuckled after I explained the situation. "Oh, my Easter dinner is going to be very interesting this year." "Please don't say anything," I begged. "The deal isn't public yet, and I haven't figured out how to handle this with the family." I wouldn't dream of spoiling the moment, she assured me. "Some things are worth waiting for." As Easter approached, I found myself both dreading and anticipating the family gathering with unprecedented intensity. For years I had sat through Nathan's boasting and my parents' admiration with quiet resignation. This year would be different, though no one but Grandma and I knew it yet. Easter morning dawned bright and clear, the Seattle sky showing rare blue between scattered clouds. I stood in my condo overlooking Lake Union, mentally preparing for the day ahead. The acquisition of TechCore and 4 other companies would be announced Monday morning, sending ripples through the tech industry and fundamentally changing my family dynamics forever. I called Rebecca, needing to ground myself in the business reality before facing the emotional complexity of family. Having second thoughts, she asked when I explained my anxiety about the impending family dinner. "Not about the acquisition," I clarified. "TechCore's workflow engine is exactly what we need, and their client base aligns perfectly with our expansion strategy. It's the right move for ConnectWise. But I'm about to upend my entire family structure. Nathan has defined himself as the tech success story for so long. I don't know how he'll handle this." Rebecca's laugh carried through the phone. "That sounds like a him problem, not a you problem. This is business, not personal. TechCore's technology complements ours, and the price is right." I smiled, recognizing my own words from the board meeting echoed back to me. "You're right. I've earned this moment." "Damn straight you have," she agreed. "Now go enjoy your Easter egg hunt, and try not to spill the acquisition beans before Monday's announcement." I dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant blue dress that projected confidence without ostentation. No need to telegraph success through designer labels. The news itself would be statement enough. The drive to Grandma Margaret's house in the suburbs took 40 minutes, a journey filled with memories of past Easter gatherings. I recalled countless dinners where Nathan held court while I sat quietly, years of his dismissive comments about my career choices, the constant subtle reinforcement that he was the family's tech genius, and I was something less. Grandma's modest 2-story house looked the same as always, decorated with cheerful Easter wreaths and ceramic bunnies on the porch. Several cars already lined the driveway, indicating that much of the family had arrived. I parked on the street and took a deep breath before gathering the spring flower arrangement and homemade lemon bars I'd brought. The traditional Easter egg hunt for the younger cousin's children was in full swing as I walked up the path. My cousin Jessica's twins, 6-year-old terrors in matching Easter outfits, raced past me screaming with delight as they spotted colorful eggs in Grandma's flower beds. Careful of the tulips, I called after them, remembering Grandma's pride in her spring garden. Inside the house bustled with familiar activity. Aunts and uncles clustered in the living room discussing recent vacations and home renovation projects. My mother was in the kitchen with my Aunt Linda putting the finishing touches on side dishes. Dad and Uncle Robert were debating something sports-related in the corner, gesturing emphatically at each other. Alice and Mom spotted me and hurried over for a hug. "We were wondering when you'd get here. Nathan just called and said he's running a bit late. He's bringing his new girlfriend Melissa." Of course Nathan would make a grand entrance with his new girlfriend. He never simply arrived. He had to make an event of it. "How are things at your little company?" Mom asked, her tone suggesting she was being polite rather than genuinely interested. "Still hanging in there." "We're doing well," I said mildly, growing steadily. Before she could respond, Dad joined us. There's my girl. How's startup life treating you? Nathan was just promoted to VP of Engineering at TechCore. Did he tell you? Youngest VP in company history, apparently. That's impressive, I acknowledged, suppressing a smile at the irony. In less than 48 hours, that VP position would be part of my company. I made my way to the kitchen where Grandma Margaret was orchestrating the final preparations for dinner. At 82, she remained sharp and energetic, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob that framed her intelligent face. There's my secret entrepreneur, she whispered, when I hugged her, making sure no one else could hear. How are you holding up? Nervous, I admitted quietly. Is it wrong that part of me is looking forward to seeing his face when he finds out? Grandma chuckled. Enjoy your moment, dear. You've earned it honestly. I helped her prepare the glazed carrots and set up the serving dishes, our private conspiracy, creating a bubble of calm amid the family chaos. As we worked, she offered a cryptic comment. Sometimes the quiet ones surprise everyone, don't they? The relative peace was shattered by the distinctive sound of Nathan's arrival, a boisterous greeting in the foyer followed by introductions of his new girlfriend Melissa to various family members. His voice carried through the house, confident and commanding attention as always. I steeled myself and went to greet them, curious about the woman who had captured my brother's notoriously fickle interest. Melissa was tall and stylish, with a computer science PhD, according to Nathan's immediate and prominent mention of her credentials. And this is my sister Allison, Nathan said when I approached. She works in tech too, sort of. Has a small startup with a friend. ConnectWise Solutions, I supplied, extending my hand to Melissa. Lovely to meet you. Nathan's eyes narrowed slightly at my direct naming of the company, something I usually avoided in family settings. Yeah, they do some kind of user experience consulting thing, he added dismissively. Integration platforms, actually, I corrected mildly. Enterprise software. Right, he nodded absently before immediately launching into a story about a crisis he'd recently solved at work, effectively cutting off any further discussion of my company. I caught Melissa giving me an apologetic glance as Nathan steered her toward other relatives. Interesting. She seemed more perceptive than his previous girlfriends. Nathan continued his grand tour of the gathering, making sure everyone heard about his recent promotion and the critical project he was leading. I noticed he carefully avoided mentioning TechCore's financial struggles or their declining market share, presenting himself as the conquering hero saving the company through technical brilliance. Mom's innocent question about how both our jobs were going provided the perfect opening for Nathan's longest monologue yet. He launched into a technically dense explanation of the refactoring project he was leading, dropping industry jargon and coding terminology that most of the family couldn't possibly understand. The legacy code base was an absolute disaster before I took over, he explained, gesturing with his wine glass. The previous leadership had no vision for scalable architecture. I've implemented a complete overhaul of the core systems that's going to position us for the next generation of enterprise solutions. I sipped my wine and said nothing, knowing that ConnectWise's due diligence had revealed a very different picture of TechCore's technical situation. The complete overhaul Nathan described was actually a patchwork of temporary fixes that hadn't addressed the fundamental issues with their aging architecture. As everyone moved to the dining room for dinner, I found myself seated directly across from Nathan, with Grandma Margaret at the head of the table between us. The traditional Easter ham, scalloped potatoes, glazed carrots, and fresh rolls were passed around as family conversation flowed. Throughout the meal, I caught Grandma watching me with twinkling eyes, clearly anticipating the moment that was building inevitably toward us. I focused on my food, answering questions when asked, but otherwise letting the familiar pattern of family interactions swirl around me. Nathan dominated the conversation as usual, turning nearly every topic back to his work and achievements. I noticed Melissa occasionally touching his arm when his boasting became particularly excessive, a gentle attempt to modulate his behavior that he seemed oblivious to. As dessert was served, lemon meringue pie and carrot cake arranged beautifully on Grandma's antique cake stands, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Years of being overshadowed, underestimated, and dismissed had led to this moment. Whatever happened next would permanently alter the dynamics that had defined our family for decades. I caught Grandma's eye, and the slight nod she gave me indicated that she too felt the shifting of something long established, like the first tremor before an earthquake. The table was set, the players assembled, and the stage prepared for a revelation that would leave no one unchanged. The Easter dinner was in full swing, Grandma's dining room filled with the clinking of silverware against china and the overlapping conversations of family catching up. The traditional foods comforted with their familiarity, the glazed ham centerpiece surrounded by colorful spring vegetables and fresh-baked rolls. I was quietly enjoying my meal when Cousin Jessica, seated to my left, turned to me with genuine interest. "So, Allison, how is your work going? Mom mentioned you started your own company a few years ago." Before I could fully respond, Nathan interjected from across the table. "Allie's little startup is more of a hobby, really. She and her friend have been tinkering with it for 3 years now." His tone carried the clear implication that any real tech company would have either failed or made a major splash in that time frame. "It's going well," I answered Jessica, directly ignoring Nathan's characterization. "We've grown to over 100 employees now and have some exciting developments in the works." 100 employees, Mom looked surprised. "You never mentioned it was that large." Nathan laughed lightly. "Well, employees probably includes their contract developers in India or wherever. That's how these small shops inflate their numbers." I took a sip of water, choosing not to correct him. All 117 of our employees worked in our Seattle headquarters, but explaining that would seem defensive. Sensing an opportunity to recenter the conversation on himself, Nathan launched into an extended discourse on the complexities of real enterprise software development. "The thing about actual enterprise architecture," he began, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he reserved for technical explanations, "is that it requires a fundamentally different approach than consumer applications. We're talking about systems that process millions of transactions daily with 5 nines reliability requirements and compliance considerations that most developers can't even comprehend." My father nodded appreciatively, clearly impressed, though likely understanding little of the technical jargon. My mother beamed proudly at Nathan, while other family members adopted expressions of polite interest. "The technical debt in enterprise systems is extraordinary." Nathan continued, warming to his subject. "At TechCore, I'm leading a complete architectural overhaul while maintaining backward compatibility with legacy systems. It's like performing heart surgery while the patient runs a marathon." He paused to take a bite of ham, then added the kicker. "Not everyone can handle a real career in tech. It takes a certain kind of mind." His gaze flickered briefly, to me the implication clear. The table fell into an uncomfortable silence as relatives glanced between us, aware of the subtle dig but unsure how to respond. In previous years, I might have let the comment pass, swallowing my frustration along with my dessert. But this Easter was different. I had nothing to prove anymore, nothing to defend. Success was the best response, and mine was just hours away from becoming public knowledge. Nathan, interpreting my silence as acquiescence, pressed his advantage. TechCore was in real trouble before my team took over the core platform. The previous leadership had no vision for scalable architecture. But we've turned things around completely. The CEO practically admitted I saved the company during our last all-hands meeting. This claim was particularly rich given what I knew about TechCore's actual financial situation and the real reasons for their impending acquisition. Their technical approach, including Nathan's much-vaunted architectural overhaul, had been assessed as inadequate by our technical due diligence team. The family continued eating as Nathan detailed his technical heroics, the conversation effectively hijacked. I caught Melissa's expression, a mixture of admiration and slight embarrassment at her boyfriend's unbridled self-promotion. She was clearly intelligent, likely recognizing the social dynamics at play, even if she didn't know the full irony of the situation. Just as I was considering how to gracefully change the subject, Grandma Margaret cleared her throat softly. The table quieted immediately, everyone conditioned by years of family dinners to pay attention when Grandma wanted to speak. "Allison," she said, her voice carrying clearly despite its gentleness, "isn't your company doing rather well these days?" All eyes turned to me. Nathan looked mildly annoyed at the interruption of his narrative. Yes, we're doing well, I acknowledged modestly. Our integration platform has been gaining significant market share. Integration platform, Dad asked, genuine curiosity in his voice for perhaps the first time regarding my work. What exactly does that mean? Before I could explain, Nathan jumped in. It's basically middleware, Dad. Software that connects other software. Not particularly innovative, but useful, I suppose. Actually, I countered, finally ready to correct him, our approach is quite different from traditional middleware. We've developed a new paradigm for enterprise integration that eliminates the need for custom coding between systems. Nathan rolled his eyes slightly. Every startup claims their approach is revolutionary. The reality is that enterprise integration is a solved problem. The real innovation is happening at companies like TechCore, where we're rebuilding the fundamental architecture of business systems. He launched into another technical explanation of his work, detailing how his team was saving TechCore from years of poor technical decisions. As he spoke with absolute authority about the company's bright future, I caught Grandma's eye. A small smile played at the corner of her mouth. Then came the moment that would forever divide our family history into before and after. Is that why your company just bought his? Grandma asked me, her voice innocent but her eyes twinkling with mischief. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Nathan froze mid-sentence, fork halfway to his mouth. My mother's water glass stopped halfway to her lips. My father's expression cycled rapidly through confusion, disbelief, and shock. Nathan recovered first. What are you talking about, Grandma? I think you're confused. All eyes turned to me, waiting for confirmation of Grandma's apparent mistake. Instead, I calmly placed my napkin beside my plate and met Nathan's gaze directly. The acquisition finalizes next week, I said quietly. I was waiting for the official announcement. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Nathan's face flushed deep red, his expression a mixture of shock, confusion, and budding anger. My parents wore identical expressions of bewilderment, looking between Nathan and me as if trying to determine if this was some elaborate joke. That's impossible, Nathan sputtered. TechCore is worth. You can't possibly. Your little startup couldn't. ConnectWise Solutions concluded its Series C funding round last month. I explained, keeping my voice level and professional. We're valued at just over $500 million now. The acquisition of TechCore and 4 other complementary companies is part of our expansion strategy. $500 million, my father repeated weakly. This is bullshit, Nathan said, his voice rising. You're making this up. The press release goes out Monday morning, I replied. I would have told you privately before then, but the timing of Easter dinner made that complicated. Cousin Jessica broke the tension with an inappropriate laugh that she quickly stifled. Sorry, it's just... wow. You knew about this. Nathan turned accusingly to Grandma Margaret, who was calmly eating her carrot cake. I might have made a small investment a few years ago, she acknowledged with a serene smile. Allison has always had good business sense. You invested in her company but not mine. Nathan's voice cracked slightly with indignation. You never asked, Grandma pointed out reasonably. Besides, you were always doing so well on your own according to your stories. My mother finally found her voice. Allison, why didn't you tell us your company was so successful? The question hung in the air, heavy with years of unspoken dynamics and overlooked achievements. The answer was obvious to everyone at the table, though no one seemed ready to acknowledge it explicitly. I wanted to succeed or fail on my own terms, I said simply. Nathan pushed back from the table abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. I need some air, he muttered, storming out of the dining room and through the front door, letting it slam behind him. Melissa looked mortified, caught between following her boyfriend and the awkwardness of leaving the table. I'm sorry, she said to no one in particular. He's very proud and this is obviously a shock. It's all right, dear, Grandma assured her. Family dynamics are complicated at the best of times. The questions came in a flood, then everyone talking at once. How had I built such a valuable company so quietly? What exactly did ConnectWise do? Would Nathan lose his job in the acquisition? How had I kept this secret for so long? I answered as patiently and completely as I could. explaining our business model and growth trajectory in terms my non-technical family members could understand. I assured them that the acquisition wasn't about eliminating jobs, but about integrating complementary technologies. We value TechCore's technical talent, I explained, including Nathan if he chooses to stay. As the initial shock wore off, my parents' expressions shifted from confusion to a complex mixture of pride, regret, and something like embarrassment. They had spent years focusing their attention and admiration on Nathan's achievements, while largely overlooking mine. The revelation of my success forced a sudden, uncomfortable reevaluation of their perceptions. "We had no idea," Dad said quietly. "You never said anything about how big your company had become." The unspoken question lingered. Why hadn't I shared my successes with them? The answer was written in years of family dinners where Nathan's coding prowess was celebrated while my business achievements were treated as cute side projects. It was embedded in the subtle ways they had always positioned Nathan as the real tech success story of the family, while casting me in a supporting role. Grandma Margaret, sensing the emotional undercurrents threatening to overwhelm the Easter celebration, skillfully redirected the conversation to lighter topics. But the revelation had fundamentally altered something in our family's understanding of itself. The carefully maintained hierarchy had been upended, and no one quite knew how to proceed. As dessert concluded, I excused myself to check on Nathan. Whatever our complicated history he was, still my brother and I knew this revelation had been a seismic shock to his self-image. The conversation we needed to have was long overdue. I found Nathan sitting on Grandma's porch swing, staring blankly at the front yard, where Easter egg hunters had trampled her carefully tended grass earlier that day. He didn't look up when I sat beside him, the old swing creaking under our combined weight. For several minutes we sat in silence, the tension between us thick enough to touch. Growing up, this porch swing had been our neutral territory, the place where childhood fights were resolved and secrets shared. It seemed fitting that we would find ourselves here now, at the cusp of a new chapter in our relationship. "You bought my company just to humiliate me," Nathan finally said, his voice flat. "The ultimate revenge for all the times I dismissed your work." "That's not true," I replied quietly. "The acquisition makes perfect business sense. TechCore's workflow engine complements our integration platform. Your client list aligns with our expansion strategy. The decision would have been the same if you worked anywhere else." He turned to look at me, his expression a mixture of anger and grudging curiosity. $500 million? Seriously? I nodded. The enterprise integration market is massive, and our approach solves problems that companies like TechCore have struggled with. We've grown over 200% annually for 3 years. "And you never said a word," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "All those family dinners where I talked about my projects and you just sat there knowing you were building something bigger." "Would you have listened if I had tried to explain?" I asked gently. "Or would you have told me all the reasons my approach wouldn't work, how I didn't understand the real technical challenges?" The question hung between us, honest in a way our conversations rarely were. Nathan stared at his hands for a long moment before responding. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I've always seen you as my little sister who didn't quite get tech the way I did. It's hard to adjust that picture." "I do get tech," I said, "just differently than you. You see it from the code perspective, I see it from the user and business perspective. Both approaches are valid and necessary." A cardinal landed on Grandma's bird feeder nearby, its bright red plumage vivid against the green backdrop of early spring foliage. We both watched it in silence, the symbolic parallel of something distinctive and unexpected entering our field of vision not lost on either of us. "So what happens now?" Nathan asked eventually. "Am I supposed to work for my little sister?" There was both humor and genuine anxiety in his question. The prospect clearly unsettled him, deeply challenging his identity as the family's tech authority. "Technically, you'd be working for ConnectWise, not for me personally," I clarified. "Our organization is structured with considerable autonomy for technical leaders. Your role would be secure and your expertise valued." "But you'd be my boss's boss's boss," he pointed out. "Essentially, yes," I acknowledged. though I'd hope we could establish a professional relationship separate from our personal history. Nathan laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. That's going to take some adjustment. It's your choice whether to stay, I assured him. We're retaining most of TechCore's technical talent, but if this is too uncomfortable, I'd understand. He was quiet for a moment, processing the option. And if I stay, how would that even work? Allie, I've spent years dismissing what you do. The entire company knows how I talk about product people who don't code. Then maybe it's time for a new perspective, I suggested. Your technical skills are exceptional, Nathan. No one's questioning that. But technology alone doesn't build successful products. Users' business models, market fit, all these matter too. We lapsed into silence again, the porch swing gently rocking as we contemplated the altered landscape of our relationship. The front door opened and Melissa peeked out, concern evident on her face. Everything okay out here? She asked cautiously. Nathan sighed. My sister just bought my company, so I'm processing that. To my surprise, Melissa smiled. That's incredible, Allison. ConnectWise is ConnectWise Solutions, right? I read about your integration platform in Tech Monthly. The adaptive API approach is brilliant. Nathan looked between us, bewildered. You know about her company. Melissa nodded, joining us on the porch. I tried to tell you about them last month when you were complaining about integration challenges. They're doing groundbreaking work. The expression on Nathan's face, a mixture of confusion, embarrassment, and dawning realization, would have been comical in any other context. He was confronting not just my success, but the possibility that he had been genuinely wrong in his assessment of my work. We should head back inside, I suggested, sensing he needed time to process. The family has about 1,000 questions. The remainder of Easter dinner was surreal. The natural order of our family gathering with Nathan at the center, explaining technical concepts to an admiring audience, had been fundamentally disrupted. Relatives who had barely asked about my work in years suddenly wanted detailed explanations of ConnectWise's business model and growth strategy. My parents oscillated between obvious pride in my success and visible discomfort at having so completely misunderstood my career trajectory. They had built their parental identity partly around having a technical prodigy for a son, with their daughter in a supporting role. The reversal left them struggling to recalibrate their narrative. We left Grandma's house that evening with the promise of family conversations to come. Nathan and I exchanged an awkward hug, both of us aware that our sibling relationship had entered uncharted territory. The following week was a whirlwind of activity as the acquisitions became official. The press release announcing ConnectWise's expansion through strategic acquisitions made the front page of the tech section in several major publications. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members who had apparently only now Google searched my company. Nathan surprised me by accepting an invitation to tour our headquarters before making his decision about staying with the company post-acquisition. He arrived looking uncomfortable in the ConnectWise lobby, his usual confidence noticeably diminished. This is not what I expected, he admitted, as I showed him around our open, modern office space filled with collaborative work areas and the hum of productive activity. What did you expect? I asked, genuinely curious. He shrugged. I don't know. Something smaller, less established. This looks like a real tech company. It is a real tech company, I confirmed, introducing him to key team members, including Rebecca and our CTO, Jasmine. The technical conversation between Nathan, Jasmine, and our lead architects was fascinating to observe. Initially defensive and trying to assert his expertise, Nathan gradually relaxed as he engaged with the genuine technical challenges our team was solving. His questions became more curious than challenging, and I could see his perception shifting in real time. Your distributed transaction approach is actually elegant, he acknowledged during a technical deep dive. I wouldn't have thought about solving it that way, but it addresses the latency issues we've been struggling with at TechCore. By the end of the day, something had changed in his demeanor. The shock was giving way to a grudging professional respect. He wasn't ready to fully embrace the new reality, but he was beginning to see possibilities beyond his initial reaction. I need to think about it, he said when I asked if he'd decided about staying. This is still a lot to process. A week after the acquisition was finalized, our parents asked to visit the ConnectWise offices. I gave them the same tour, watching their expressions as they began to truly comprehend the scale and significance of what I had built. Mom paused by the wall displaying our company timeline and awards her fingers tracing the framed article from TechCrunch that had featured us 2 years earlier. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice small. "All this time we thought that Nathan was the successful one and I was just playing at business," I finished gently. Tears welled in her eyes. "We were so wrong, Allison. I'm so sorry we didn't see what you were building." Dad stood beside her, uncharacteristically quiet, taking in the evidence of my success that surrounded us. "I don't understand why you kept this from us," he said finally. "We would have been so proud." "Would you?" I asked. "Or would you have compared it to Nathan's work, explained why his contributions were more real or technically significant? I needed to do this on my terms, without constantly measuring it against his achievements." The honesty was painful but necessary. For years, our family dynamic had been built around Nathan's technical brilliance, with my contributions consistently minimized by comparison. That pattern couldn't be unwound in a single conversation, but acknowledging it was the first step. "We never meant to make you feel less important," Mom insisted, clearly distressed. "I know," I assured her, "but intentions and impact are different things. I needed space to succeed or fail without the weight of family expectations and comparisons." Dad nodded slowly, a new understanding dawning in his expression. "I think I get it now. And for what it's worth, I'm incredibly proud of what you've built here. Not in comparison to Nathan or anyone else. Just on its own merits." Those words, simple as they were, meant more than he could possibly know. The most surprising development came 3 weeks after the acquisition, when Nathan officially accepted a position as technical director for the workflow automation division of ConnectWise. His decision came after several long conversations with Jasmine about the technical roadmap and integration strategy. "Your CTO is brilliant," he told me when he called to accept the offer. "And I hate to admit it, but your business strategy actually makes sense. I want to be part of where this is going, even if it means accepting my little sister outranks me." "So you're okay working at my company?" I asked, hardly believing the turn of events. "It's still weird," he admitted. "But professionally, it's the right move. And personally, maybe it's time I developed a more balanced perspective on what makes technology successful." His girlfriend Melissa later confided that she had strongly encouraged him to take the position. "He needed humbling," she told me with a wink at a family dinner. "And working with people who approach problems differently will make him a better engineer." The first executive meeting with Nathan present was undeniably awkward. He sat stiffly as I outlined our strategic priorities, visibly struggling with the reality of me leading the discussion. But when the conversation turned technical, his expertise shone through, and I made a point of acknowledging his valuable input. Over the following months, we established a new professional dynamic that gradually influenced our personal relationship as well. Nathan's technical brilliance, when directed toward our shared goals, rather than used as a weapon of superiority, proved invaluable to several key projects. For my part, I learned to more directly assert my expertise in business strategy and user experience, no longer diminishing my contributions to avoid his criticism. We were finding a balance where both our strengths could be recognized without comparison. Our first collaborative project came when a major client needed a custom implementation that required both Nathan's technical architecture skills and my understanding of user workflows. Working together, we delivered a solution that neither of us could have created alone. "We make a pretty good team when we're not competing," Nathan acknowledged after the successful launch. "We always did," I reminded him. "We just got stuck in roles that didn't let us see it." 1 year after the Easter dinner revelation that had upended our family's understanding of itself, we gathered again at Grandma Margaret's house for the annual tradition. The physical setting was the same: the familiar dining room with its antique china cabinet, the carefully set table with spring flowers as a centerpiece, but nearly everything else had changed. ConnectWise had continued its impressive growth trajectory, nearly doubling in size and expanding internationally. The integration of TechCore's technology had proven even more valuable than initially projected, creating a combined platform that was rapidly becoming the industry standard for enterprise integration. More significant than the business success was the transformation in our family dynamics. Nathan and I had developed a new relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition. We still disagreed often our different approaches to technology, creating natural tension, but the disagreements had become productive rather than dismissive. As we settled around Grandma's table, the conversation flowed naturally between topics no longer dominated by Nathan's technical monologues. When discussion turned to our work, we both contributed perspectives, sometimes finishing each other's thoughts, as we explained complex concepts to our non-technical relatives. "It's like watching a completely different family," Grandma Margaret whispered to me as she passed the dinner rolls. "Though I always knew you had this in you." After dinner, I found a quiet moment to speak with her alone, curious about something that had nagged at me since last year's dramatic reveal. "How did you know I would succeed?" I asked her. "When you invested in ConnectWise, it was just an idea with minimal funding. Most startups fail." Grandma's eyes twinkled with her characteristic sharp intelligence. "I've been around long enough to recognize different kinds of brilliance. Nathan has always been what people expect a tech genius to look like, all coded in algorithms. But you, Allison, you understand the human side of technology. You see connections and opportunities that purely technical minds miss." She patted my hand gently. "I always knew you would find your own path, dear. You just needed everyone else to see it too." Her words warmed me deeply. In a family that had prioritized a certain type of technical ability, her recognition of my different but equally valuable approach had been a lifeline. Our conversation was interrupted by Nathan, joining us more relaxed in family settings than I could ever remember seeing him. The past year had changed him too, softening the brittle shell of superiority he had maintained for so long. "What are you two conspiring about?" he asked, dropping into a chair beside us. "Just Grandma's secret investment strategy," I teased. "She has a better eye for unicorn startups than most venture capitalists I know." Nathan laughed, the sound genuine, and lacking the edge that had characterized most of our interactions growing up. No argument there. I should have been asking for her advice years ago instead of lecturing everyone about code architecture. His acknowledgement of his past behavior, offered casually but sincerely, reflected how far we had come. The brother who once dismissed my work as not real tech now regularly sought my input on product strategy and user experience. This transformation had been cemented 2 months earlier at the Seattle Tech Summit, where Nathan and I had presented together on the integration of technical architecture and user-centered design. Standing side by side on stage, we had demonstrated how our complementary approaches created stronger, more effective technology solutions. The audience response had been overwhelmingly positive, with several attendees commenting on the rare combination of deep technical knowledge and user empathy our presentation had showcased. What they couldn't know was that this professional collaboration represented the healing of a personal rift that had shaped both our lives. Our parents had undergone their own evolution over the past year. Mom had tearfully apologized for the years of unintentional favoritism, acknowledging how their focus on Nathan's technical achievements had made my different strengths invisible to them. "We were so narrow in our definition of success," she admitted during a family dinner several months after the acquisition. "We thought we were encouraging both of you, but we were really only seeing one kind of ability." Dad had struggled more with the recalibration, his identity so intertwined with being the father of a coding prodigy that accepting a broader definition of technological success came harder to him. But watching Nathan and me work together, seeing the respect we now had for each other's different approaches, had gradually shifted his perspective. "I think I understand now what you've been trying to tell us for years," he told me recently. "Technology isn't just about the code, it's about solving human problems." Grandma Margaret's health had become more fragile over the past year, making this Easter gathering particularly precious. At 83, she remained mentally sharp, but physically more vulnerable. I had made a point of visiting her weekly, sharing the developments at ConnectWise, and often seeking her surprisingly insightful business advice. My grandmother, the secret tech investor, I teased her now. Your $25,000 investment has multiplied quite nicely. Best money I ever spent, she replied with satisfaction. Not just for the return, but for what it helped create. Her gaze moved meaningfully between Nathan and me. The investment had indeed been profitable beyond anyone's expectations. As an early shareholder, Grandma had seen her modest contribution grow exponentially with each funding round. When I had offered to buy her out at a generous premium during our Series C round, she had flatly refused. I'm in this for the long haul, she had insisted. I want to see just how far you'll go. Her faith had been a foundation upon which I had built not just a successful company, but a new sense of self-worth that no longer depended on family validation. As Easter dinner concluded and family members began to depart, Nathan pulled me aside for a private word on Grandma's porch, the same spot where we had begun our reconciliation a year earlier. I need to say something that's long overdue, he began, uncharacteristically hesitant. I was wrong about you, Allie. Not just about your business acumen, but about your approach to technology. The work we've done together this year has made me a better engineer because you forced me to think beyond the code to the human impact. The admission clearly cost him something, his natural confidence momentarily giving way to vulnerability. The brother who had once dismissed me was acknowledging not just my success but the validity of my perspective. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot. I've been thinking about why I was so dismissive for so long, he continued, staring out at Grandma's spring garden. I think I felt threatened. You have this intuitive understanding of what technology should do for people that I've had to work really hard to develop. It came naturally to you. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. After years of him positioning himself as the natural tech genius and me as the less gifted sibling, he was acknowledging a form of intelligence in me that he had struggled to acquire. We need both approaches, I assured him. The technical depth and the human understanding. That's why the projects we've collaborated on have been so successful. He nodded, a smile forming. ConnectWise's secret weapon, feuding siblings with complementary skills. We laughed together, the sound carrying across Grandma's yard as the spring twilight deepened around us. The journey from rivalry to partnership had been complex, and at times painful, but the result was stronger than either of us could have achieved alone. Back inside, I found Grandma Margaret watching us through the window, satisfaction evident in her expression. She had orchestrated this reconciliation in her subtle way, creating the conditions for truth to emerge and healing to begin. You knew exactly what you were doing last Easter, didn't you? I asked, joining her by the window. Sometimes family systems need a little shock to reset themselves, she acknowledged with a mischievous smile. I just provided the right moment for the truth to come out. As the last of the family departed, and we helped Grandma clean up from dinner, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year, from hiding my success to integrating it into my family identity, from competitive sibling rivalry to collaborative partnership, from being dismissed to being respected on my own terms. The company continued to thrive, but the personal growth had been the more meaningful achievement. Nathan had found a new humility that made his technical brilliance more effective and accessible. I had developed a confidence in my vision that no longer required external validation. Our parents had expanded their understanding of success beyond narrow technical definitions. And perhaps most importantly, we had all learned that there is room for different kinds of intelligence and contribution, that comparison diminishes while collaboration elevates. As I prepare to leave Grandma's house, I can't help but think about the many siblings out there navigating their own complicated dynamics, trapped in roles assigned to them years ago that no longer fit who they've become. Have you experienced sibling rivalry that shaped your self-perception? How did you break free from limiting family narratives about your abilities? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding your own path. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with family expectations or sibling comparisons. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these experiences is the first step toward change. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember that success comes in many forms, and the most satisfying victories aren't about proving others wrong, but about finding mutual respect and understanding. In the end, there's room for all of us to shine in our own unique ways.